I am just going to kind of like go down the list of questions, but also I would love if that like evolves into like conversation about other topics, anything that you would be like interested in talking about. My first question is, how have you seen the community here grow and change in your time here? Where was it like when it started and what's been like happening?
Sure. Well, when we first started, our community was, I guess, nascent is probably the right word for it. The community was really nascent, and we really did have to build it from the ground up. That said, we work very, very closely with our community and our event organizers. To me, community is sort of a double-spaced dragon, but like the fun dragon that you fly, not the evil one that you slay.
Sure.
On one side, you're talking about like the in-store community, which is certainly something that we work to maintain. And that involves us, every game has a designated champion. And we work very closely with those particular champions to make sure that they have time on the calendar and all of those things so that we can meet the needs of that community. And they vary widely. What a champion for a minis game wants is very different than what a champion for board game wants, which is different from what someone for role-playing games wants, which is different.
When you say champion, do you mean like facilitator or like the person who's like
that's
running?
Exactly right. Okay. They take on the role of we work with them as sort of the representative of that community. There's not like an official election process or anything. I suppose if a community wanted one, we'd let them have it.
Sure.
But it's kind of just they're the delegate or the representative from that community who talks to us and make sure that we've got all their events on the calendar so that we can adequately promote them. So we have a very simple system for whether or not we charge for an event. If we're going to offer pricing, there's an entry fee.
Sure.
If we're not, there's not.
Okay.
It's that simple.
Yeah.
So for Magic Tournament, we're going to offer pricing. There's going to be an entry fee. For Dungeons and Dragons Adventurers League, there is no pricing aside from having fun, which is a prize in and of itself, but it does not technically have a monetary value, so we don't charge for that. To the extent that there are entry fees, we also ask that community member to be a check on us to make sure that we are pricing or that we are charging events responsibly.
Sure.
Obviously, we have to cover our own costs, and we are a lot more open with those folks about what those costs are. We have found that being responsive to the needs of our community is what's right there. That said, in addition to the store's community, the store itself is a part of a larger College Park Prince George's County community. And so we do try and work with that. We work with the Prince George's Memorial County Library System. We're very involved with their gaming expo every year. Several clubs at the University of Maryland, the Board Gaming Club and the TCG Club. We do a lot of fundraising for local schools. Hyattsville and the Prince George's County area have done an absolutely wonderful thing, which is in the fall they have, rather than every single school calling us and being like, can you give us some games for our annual PGA fundraiser, which of course for the schools that do that we do. But the public schools started it's called the Zombie Run. It's their big fundraiser for the PTAs, but they said, well, we're an amalgamation of public schools, but we will let the private schools and the parochial schools, and you all can jump on as well. We always sponsor the Zombie Run, which is so much fun. Like, have like a little tent down there.
Yeah.
But this particular board we have is 3x3, and so it's absolutely giant, and so it's very fun, and we get to hang, and it's that kind of thing. We do a lot of work. Like I said, the library's game expo. We also had several librarians come to us and say we want to get Dungeons and Dragons as a thing going at the libraries, and so we reached out to our in-store community and said we have a bunch of librarians that want to learn how to play Dungeons and Dragons. We have lots and lots of really good game masters.
Mm-hmm.
Can you, is there anyone here who wants to teach a bunch of librarians how to play Dungeons and Dragons so that they can then take the next step? And so we were able to facilitate that. We gave them free space in the back room for their, I think they ran like a 3 or 4 week campaign. And then at the end, we donated to the library a copy of the Player's Handbook, the Dungeon Master's Guide, the Monster Manual, and we needed an adventure book. So obviously we went with Candlekeep because it's a whole bunch of adventures that take place in a library.
Yeah, it works. Yeah.
Yeah. Some might have said it was a little too on the nose.
Why not, though, right? Yeah.
So,
If it's okay, I want to backtrack to something you were talking about earlier, which was, people coming in and talking about like the structure of how like individual game communities get started here.
Mm-hmm.
Is it like one person coming in and saying, hey, like me and my friends want to play this game and I want to run it and we can run it for other people? Or like what's the process of like someone starting something
it's
here?
a great question. Before we go to that, I'm going to say one other area that we are very closely involved with the community is we work very closely with Break My Game.
Okay.
It started as an organization that wanted to create events for game designers to play test their board games.
Okay, cool.
And they still do that, but they have also grown such that they're also doing a lot of education for game designers to be like, hey, in addition to getting the mechanics on your game right, you've now got to either sell your game to a publisher or self-publish, and there are lots and lots of pitfalls, and here be dragons. And in this case, the dragons that you need to slay, not the fun ones that you get to ride. And so they do a lot of work with them, helping sort of navigate that process of, are you going to crowdfund your game? Or are you going to take it to a publisher? And if you sell it to a publisher, let's talk about what that means. And so we really, really like working with them. But so you're following on to your question about how that process works. Mm-hmm. So BMG was very easy. They have been around. They will be 10 years old this year in May. They were one of our first big organization. And some of the groups for different games are a little more organized than others. Are you familiar with Warhammer or Age of Sigmar?
A little bit, yeah.
So those communities, especially the Age of Sigmar community, is very well organized in the DC area. Mm-hmm. And so, I for like the month or two before we were opening was putting out all sorts of things on social media. And they actually reached out to us about 10 days, 2 weeks before we opened. And he at the time was actually the main manager dude at the Amazon sorting center right up the road. He's Scottish, James O'Brien. You love getting a phone call from James. You get to listen to the Scottish accent. But James was like, hey, so glad you all are opening. We have a pretty well organized group. I am already the main organizer for a different store, but I've got someone else that's going to be your store's Sigmar organizer. So here they are. Cool. Other ones, the TCGs like Magic the Gathering, we knew we would need to. So for those, we ran it internally as a store with us sort of acting as that organizer for a little while until we could sort of see leaders emerging in the community.
Yeah.
And then started working with them. And we do have people knock on our door from time to time and say, yeah, there's a new game we want you to support, or one that you haven't been supporting that's been around for a while. And there doesn't necessarily have to be a connection between like the commercial value of the game. There's a game called Mordheim that I think went out of print in the late 90s, and we ran like a 4-month Mordheim League here, which we did not sell a single copy of Mordheim. For us, that is the biggest challenge, is identifying a community leader. I can do the work and I can fill in the things and I can get them all the information and I can provide all the support in the world, but unless they really want it to happen, it just won't.
Yeah, because they're going to be the ones that are sustaining it like long term, right?
Exactly. And so that's kind of the model we're on here, is that we'll do all those things. We'll check all those boxes, and we'll make sure that we're registered. The one thing that we can't do is provide excitement to that community.
Sure. Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, most of our, all of our staff are involved in at least one of our gaming communities. We're usually pretty liberal if people come to us and say, there's a new game coming out and we'd really like to start play for it. We're usually, it's not hard to get us to say, we'll then come back to you and say, okay, does that mean you want to be our person? And 75% of the time they say, oh God, no. That seems like work, like a lot of work. And it's, most of the work is just happens at the events. We're chatting with everyone and being like, are you happy? You don't have to explicitly say that. Probably the better ones don't say it that way, but
they get the information though. Yeah.
Right.
I think I want to touch on like what it is like to host a space like this, where yes, you do have to keep the lights on, you have to sell things, but there is also like not necessarily like a cost barrier to entry. Like if someone wants to just come in and like play a game like with like part of the community, right?
Sure.
What are the like challenges associated with that? Is that something that you had to like fight for? Like, no, I really want this to be like this kind of space. Like, what is that like?
So as you look around here, you can see there's one commonality between all of the shelves bar one, and that is they're black.
Yeah.
That one right there is white, and that is our free demo library.
Okay.
It's very intentionally the exact opposite of that.
The visual language of the store is pointing there.
We very much maintain a policy that if you come in, you want to play games, and there are available tables, come in and do that. That's free. Now, if you roll in and you want to play games, and I have, 80 people here playing Commander on Commander night on Monday, unfortunately, we're not going to show any of them the door so that you can, because we've taken the time to put that on the schedule and things like that. So we also, we take the board game library with us. We do a lot of conventions work especially for some of the local conventions. It doesn't really make sense for them to maintain their own board game library.
Yeah.
And so what they'll do is they will say rent ours. Normally we just do an exchange where we set up a booth there, and in exchange for them waiving their vendor fee, let them borrow the board game library. And so it's a great way of getting it out there to people so that they can, there's over 200 titles in it right now. We probably need to shave some of those down.
Sure. Yeah.
And we've also done that. In fact, not this Saturday, but next Saturday we have another school that is having they're having an event, and so I think they sent us a list of like 25 or 30 games that we're going to check out to them. Normally we don't let people, the only people that can check out from the board game library are the staff.
Yeah.
But special occasions and things like that. And so we have the school is going to check out a whole bunch of those games, and then are going to, that's something that like the kids can do while the parents are doing whatever the PTA fundraiser.
Sure. Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. So we try when possible to,
be as flexible as possible and what's able to be done. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know how many, how many, like in your mind, like what do you think? How many like individual communities, I guess, like come here?
I think that kind of depends on how we want to define it.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of why I paused asking the question.
Because a community could be TCG players, a community could be gamers.
Sure.
Which case,
yeah.
One.
I think the reason I'm asking if it helps is I wanted to ask like what strengths you see here, if that's something that you're able to quantify in your head.
Sure. And I also, are you familiar with Gen Con?
Yeah.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
Okay. So I like to say that, at Gen Con, I like this in particular role-playing game and this particular TCG person. And in the world, I am just a gamer.
Sure, yeah.
And so, it's one of those that
there's very
as
levels
the population
to what the label
grows,
should be.
your identity changes vis-a-vis that. So I think most of us identify ourselves just as gamers, but gamers of sort of different varieties. Yeah. Really one of those moments for us where we said, "Oh my god, we have to take care of you," because what they want and how they want to experience our store is different.
It's misaligned from how you're.
And fortunately, there are some commonalities, and that was, I think, really helpful. With the board games, I was like, oh, like some of these things we don't do or we do differently and so like, how do we better modulate that? Yeah. Because we have to be a welcoming place. We have a lovely set of community guidelines up there, but
I was looking at those. I love that you have them in the first place.
Right? Thank you.
Yeah.
But to me, they really boil down to like the only thing that we don't tolerate is intolerance.
Yeah.
The board gamers, like I said, they want a slightly different experience, and so we're working to provide that. Mm-hmm. And it's tough because they're a different animal.
Sure. Yeah. Are there any like common like concerns that you're hearing or like issues you're hearing from people who would love to participate in this, but there's some like barrier to that's stopping them?
So one of the areas that, and part of this just goes to, it's our job to make the space as welcoming and open for people as possible. Hobby gaming is different than mass market gaming. Yeah. Like there's a world of difference between Sorry and Catan, and then also another world of difference again between Catan and, let's just go all the way to the top, Twilight Imperium. Sure. These are very different experiences, and part of what we've been doing there is trying to create a world where the store is actually organized from most accessible to least accessible.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
So if we were to walk outside, which on a nicer day we could just do, but no,
let's not.
Right. If you look through our windows, you're going to see on that front, you're going to see our kids games. You're going to see puzzles and brain teasers, and you're going to see classic games. You're going to see Monopoly, poker chips. About the only things that we have over there that I would really say are quote unquote hobby games are Catan and Ticket to Ride.
And even those are like very familiar to a lot of people. Right. Like they're more popular.
Yeah, and they're sort of the gateway games from that mass market space into what we do, because it's a totally different world.
Yeah, and then all the way in the back here you have like the miniatures, like environments set up. Like
exactly.
Yeah.
And the role-playing games, which are, probably as like deep into it as you go, or I'm painting my own stuff.
Sure. Yeah.
Are as far from the door as you can come, and the board games are and the idea being that you can sort of curate the depth that you want to go into the hobby. We do run a lot of learn to plays and educational events. We try to
build on it a little bit.
Right, and come at it from the perspective of getting our heads in the space of someone that isn't part of our community. And so how do we make ourselves as accessible as possible, to those folks?
Are there things that you've had to adjust like in that area as far as like realizing like, oh, like we're inaccessible in this way, let's fix it?
That was one of the big fixes we did, was the rearrangement of the store such that we moved sort of the introductory product to the front.
Did you find that was like turning people away, like from the door, like they walk in and they're like, oh, I don't know what this is, and they turn away? Or
I don't know that we've ever had people like be like
scared off
or anything.
Yeah.
And that we've been open for a little over 3 years at this point in time, and that every day I redesign the store in my head. But and Ken, who really does most of the day-to-day management of the store, he's great with our community organizers and with keeping up at to the point that we've grown enough that Sig, who's behind the counter right now, is actually going to become our new sort of events liaison, so that Ken can focus on getting in all the products that we need. It's a crazy operation. A lot of it is making sure that we are being responsive to what our communities want and need.
How have you seen like recent crises like impact communities here, as far as like things that I've been thinking about are like COVID, like election tensions, anything like that, or if there's other ones that you have seen impact this community.
Sure. COVID was huge.
Yeah.
We opened in November of 2021.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And there was still a mask mandate in Prince George's County, which was phenomenal as a business owner, regardless of what my feelings on the issue might be.
Yeah.
It was very convenient for us to just be able to say, it's the law.
Yeah.
You have to do this.
Yes.
That said, about March of 2022, Prince George's County dropped their mask order. And so we all of a sudden were in the situation. And fortunately, we had discussed it in advance. And we continued a mask mandate. We did it until about July. And then we kind of polled our community, saw where people came down on it. And the overwhelming population of people came in and said, we feel comfortable. And there were some who said, no, if you all stop requiring people to wear masks, we're not coming. They were a very, very, very small minority. But unfortunately, you can't let that dictate for everyone. So that's kind of where we landed on that. This summer, our air conditioning went out.
Oh, not good.
Yeah, it was hugely, hugely problematic for us.
Yeah, especially for the hottest summer on record again.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it was getting to be like above 80 degrees inside the store. There were, especially Friday nights and Monday nights are probably our busiest evenings.
Mm-hmm.
And like on one evening, there were enough human beings in here, and it was hot enough that like water vapor was actually condensing on the floor.
Oh, no.
Which on top of the fact that's not great in general, also is a slipping hazard.
Yeah, and when you work with a bunch of paper materials, it's also not great.
And so going through that entire process of getting that fixed, it was looking like we might need a new HVAC. Ultimately, thank God that did not have to happen, because that would have been like $20,000.
Yeah.
But that's also, if we were to go out to the front windows, we could do that on the inside here. But I went shopping and we bought a bunch of solar shades that they cut out about 90% of the sunlight. And it's amazing because you can still see through them very well, but at the same time, 90% of the heat isn't getting through. So we, and so much of that was about just communicating and providing people with very regular updates of saying, this is the situation. We have to work here. And so this is just as unpleasant for us as it is for you, except that
if you think you hate it,
right. And we can't leave.
We're stuck here.
And to sort of describe where that process was going. Obviously, trying to order blinds or shades during June or July. I think it happened the third or fourth week in June.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't get them till like the first weekend of August.
Oof, yikes.
The AC was mostly fixed by then, so there was really only like 10 days that were really bad.
Mm-hmm.
But during the summer, we do like D&D camps for kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was really problematic for us because we needed to
take care of these kids as well.
Right. And for the most part, our player community we do have some that are under 18, but they tend to be 16 or over. Sure. There are some that are younger that their parents bring them and stuff like that. But the kids, they are minors.
Yes.
And so, we had to communicate to the parents at the beginning of the week, and we were setting the AC to like at 6 a.m. to cool things down to like 60 degrees. And
so that by the time they
came, and we found that as long as it didn't get above about 92 or 93 outside, we were fine.
Sure.
But if it did, then it would slowly be inching. And that was part of how we mitigated things. It's also an interesting one with realizing who you're responsible to communicate to.
Sure, yeah.
Because those kids, they were like, it is so cold in here, someone turn up the heat. And we were like,
that's actually the problem is.
we would, but then at 2 p.m., you would be singing a very different tune, and there would be no solving that problem.
Sure, yeah.
And unfortunately, it's like deadly. So, on the other hand, the parents were thrilled. So, they were like, okay, thank you for letting us know. We offered them all a refund. None of them took us up on it. None of them had any real complaints. They were like,
that's good.
They're like, oh, things aren't perfect. Thank you for communicating that to us.
Thanks for letting us know.
We treat us like you more, not less.
When you have people come in here, they're meeting needs that they have as far as like play, right? Like community, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Are you able to get a sense of if they have other needs, like housing or food or like mental health, or like is that like a sense that you're able to get from people, or is that kind of like hidden behind like they're here to play a game?
That is not something that we really dive into. It has gotten raised on our Discord from time to time. The store maintains a Discord. We have about 2,400 users.
That's more than I would have thought. That's awesome.
Yeah, we're actually one of the largest in the country.
Cool. Kind of like out of scope.
Officially, but it's one that we're happy to provide the infrastructure. And I can actually give an example. Ken, who's the store manager here, his roommate at the time left kind of suddenly. And he was here at work the day his roommate was moving out. And he came home. And all the stuff in Ken's bedroom had been left there. But everything was taken from the common area.
Yeah.
Like the toilet paper, the paper towels, like soap.
Yeah.
It was, the guy left a pizza box with a single uneaten slice in it.
Helpful. Nice.
And I don't remember if it was like a small couch or like a lounger type seat. That the guy who left had a cat, and the cat
he left like the one bad piece of furniture.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
That had really been ruined by the guy who's leaving the cat.
Yeah. Great.
And so one of our community members really stepped up and said, "Oh, actually, I know someone that is trying to get rid of some furniture.
Yeah.
That you can have at no charge." And so
that's awesome.
Ultimately, Ken only had to go without furniture in his home for 5 days.
That's great. That's great that you were able to, have that, tap that community, connect, tap that web, as it were. Yeah.
And and that happened very organically.
Yeah.
That person very active in our in-store community and just kind of, heard about what was happening and said, "I gotcha." We as an organization didn't fly the flag to say these are unmet needs. I just like to think that we created the infrastructure such that it could take care of itself.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was interested in exploring, taking this class in the first place, was I hear all these things about we the library hired a lawyer to come in and provide services, or we have a social worker doing this, or we're running a food bank for this. And one of the questions I wanted to answer in this class was, okay, which of these services are eventually going to be folded into what the library is doing? How much of this is really out of scope, and we need to be the connectors to be okay, that resource is elsewhere. Are these resources eventually going to get folded into normal library programs? Where's the line there, right? So you're saying, this place is not the place that is going to be we're going to connect you to the mental health support that you need or whatever, right? But the community here was able, in this one situation, to kind of do that. The last question I know we're almost at an hour, so one last one for you. What is your favorite story of connection that you've seen blossom from the community here?
We were sort of changing some things with how we administer some of the programs. And so we had informed all of our community organizers that we're kind of like, we're going to change stuff up pretty significantly rather than try to do this piecemeal. We're going to just have the voice call in the Discord. We're going to do it this Sunday night at 6:30. And, Ken and I will be on the call.
Mm-hmm.
2-3 weeks before that, I was talking to one of our coordinators. They were telling me what great time they'd had and how they and their partner had made friends with another regular and their partner, who were also regulars at this. The partners less so, but these two, and that they were going to be getting together on this Sunday night. They were so excited about meeting each other. They were at dinner and all these things. And in my head, I'm like, that's the night we're having the big champions meeting. But I didn't say anything. It's just like, I think that's wonderful. Like, I'm glad this, and then I told Ken, it's like, we're not going to have person A and person B.
Yeah.
I'm a little bummed about that. And then flash forward to the night of, and the two of them pop up on screen with glasses of wine in their hand. It's like, oh my God, I thought you were coming. They were like, no. Like, our partners are off in the kitchen, like, drinking wine and gossiping. But, like, yeah. Like,
of course we're
how
here.
could you even think that we would not be here?
That's cute.
So it was really nice.
See them forging the connection outside plus the connection inside.
And we work hard to do that. It's harder as we've gotten bigger. It's gotten harder and harder to do that, just because.
Yeah, those things kind of like thrive on a smaller scale.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think it's great because I think those connections are still being made. It's a little sadder though, because especially those of us that do more of the organizational level work for the store, I actually have to say, like, we're the ones making sure the foundations are there. We don't necessarily get to see it as much and feel like part of it as much. But it is still there.
Yeah.
I hope it is.
Still happens. Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, Becca,
Yeah.
do you need anything else?